Before we dive into these scary stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy true horror content every week. When you are ready, lean back, and let's dive into this week's horror stories. I used to drive for one of those food delivery apps. It wasn't my dream job or anything, just something that paid the bills while I was taking night classes. This happened last summer, during one of those stormy weekends up in upstate New York. The kind of rain where your wipers are on full blast and still not doing anything. Thunder so loud it rattled the steering wheel. I had to drive like 10 under the speed limit just to feel like I wasn't going to slide off the road. Around 10:40 p.m., I got a ping for a delivery a few towns over, in a place called Barrow Hill. Real quiet area, trees everywhere, barely any streetlights. The type of neighborhood that's pitch black once the sun goes down, except for the occasional porch light. I actually thought about skipping it because of the weather, but the payout was decent and I figured I was already out. Might as well finish the night strong. The address took me down this long gravel driveway off the main road. According to the GPS, it was a one-story ranch-style house. When I pulled up, the first thing I noticed was that the porch light was flickering, like full-on horror movie flickering. I grabbed the bag and jogged up the little path to the front door, hoodie pulled tight because the rain was coming in sideways. I knocked once or twice. Door opens almost immediately, like the guy was standing right behind it, waiting. He looked maybe mid-40s, tall, really pale. Not like sick pale, just colorless. Blank expression. Black t-shirt, jeans, no shoes. Didn't say much. Just stared at me. "You order DoorDash?" I asked, holding out the bag. He nodded, really slow. "Yeah." Didn't check the food, didn't thank me, just took the bag and closed the door super gently. That was it. No weird vibe from the house itself, but the guy, something about him felt off. Anyway, I got back in the car, marked the order as delivered, and was about to move on when my phone buzzed again. Another notification. Same order. It was a message from the customer. "Hey, just wondering if you're close? The GPS says you're still a few minutes away." I just stared at it for a second. My first thought was, did I deliver to the wrong place? I double-checked the address in the app, same one I'd gone to, same street number. I messaged back, "I just dropped it off." Tall guy answered the door. The reply came in almost immediately. "We've been sitting outside waiting. Can you double-check the address?" At that point, my stomach kind of dropped. I checked the GPS again and realized the dot was still a little ahead of me on the map. I'd stopped too early, so I backed out of the driveway and drove maybe another quarter mile. Sure enough, there was another driveway, longer this time, with the correct house number on the mailbox. I pulled in and saw a small family, a guy, a woman, and a kid, waiting under umbrellas on the porch. Totally normal. House lights were on. The yard was clean. It looked lived in, unlike the last place. The guy walked up to my car as I pulled in. "You the driver?" "Yeah," I said. "Sorry about the delay. I think I delivered to the wrong house before this one." Some dude answered and took the bag. He frowned. "Which house?" "The one back up the road, kind of tucked into the trees, porch light flickering." And then he got quiet. Like, immediately. Looked at his wife for a second, then back at me. "There's no one living there," he said. "That house has been empty for almost a year, no power. Nobody's bought it since the old guy who lived there passed away." "You're wrong," someone answered, took the food straight from me. He just kept staring at me, like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure if he should. I handed him a backup order from the app's support line and got out of there. Didn't even look back at the first house as I drove off. Later that night, I called the app's helpline and told them the whole thing. They logged it, said they'd look into it, but I never heard anything back. A couple weeks later, I got curious. You know how sometimes something just nags at you and you can't let it go? So I drove back during the day just to see it in the daylight. The house was still there, looked empty. Porch light was totally busted, just wires hanging loose where the bulb used to be. Grass was overgrown, windows were covered in grime. And then I saw something weird on the porch near the door. The food bag, same one I delivered. The paper was all soaked and falling apart, but it hadn't been touched, still sealed, just sitting there like no one had ever opened the door. I don't know who I handed that bag to. I'm sure he was real, but this whole experience just doesn't make sense. This happened to me and my friend, who I will refer to as Kayla for safety reasons. We were both 17 at the time, still in high school, and we had this little tradition of going on late-night drives whenever it rained. Not for any wild reason, we just liked how calm everything felt. Empty roads, music playing soft, the windshield wipers setting a rhythm. It was kind of our version of therapy. One night around 11, we were driving down this narrow back road on the outskirts of our town in Oregon. It had been raining on and off all day, and by then it had settled into a steady mist. No streetlights, barely any houses, just trees on both sides like the road was slicing through the woods. Every so often you'd catch a glimpse of a reflector on a guardrail, but that was it. We were talking about dumb stuff, crushes, classes, the usual, when Kayla pulled out her old film camera. She was really into photography, always had that thing with her. She mostly did black and white stuff, super artsy. She looked out the window and went, "This fog is perfect. Pull over. I want to get a shot." So I pulled into this little dirt turnout just off the road. We got out, and it was honestly kind of beautiful. The mist hanging low over the trees, the rain tapping on the roof of the car. Kayla walked a little ahead to line up her shot with the road vanishing into the trees like something out of a dream. She took a few photos, each flash lighting up the fog for a split second like heat lightning. I stayed by the car, leaning against the hood, scrolling through my phone when I noticed something. It was right after the third flash, maybe 50 feet behind Kayla near the edge of the trees. It looked like there was someone standing there. Just a dark shape, barely visible, but there. I blinked and stood up straighter. "Hey," I called her. "Take one more, but aim it toward the woods." She paused, confused, but turned and took another photo. Flash. Nothing. Just the trees. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Thought I saw something." We got back in the car. She set the camera on the dash and we drove off. About a week later, I went over to her place. She'd had the photos developed. This tiny little shop downtown still did film, and she always used them. When I walked into her room, the pictures were all laid out on her floor. They looked amazing. Super atmospheric, fog curling around the trees, wet pavement, that weird silvery glow rain gives off under a flash. And then we got to the third photo. There was definitely someone there, standing just off the road, partly in the trees, wearing what looked like a hospital gown, head tilted to one side like something was broken in their neck. And their face, God, their face. Their mouth was open in an unnatural way, and their eyes were just white. No pupils, no expression. Kayla just stared at it. "That's not edited," she said. "That's the original print." The next photo, where she turned toward the trees, was empty. No person, but in the bottom corner by the base of a tree, there was a blur, like something had moved too fast for the shutter to catch, not a smudge on the lens. We sat there in silence. Neither of us really knew what to say. After that, we kind of just dropped it. We didn't want to look at the photo again. I think both of us felt like if we acknowledged it too much, something would notice. We should have just thrown it out and went to the police, but we didn't. Then a few nights later, Kayla texted me, "I think someone's been in my room." I called her immediately. She sounded scared, whispering. She told me she'd woken up to a flash in the dark, like from a camera. She thought maybe it was a dream, but when she turned on her light, her camera was on the floor. But here's the part that really messed with us. It had a fresh roll in it, and it was used. The pictures she had taken earlier were all over the floor and one was missing. The one with the person we had seen in the woods. The next morning, she took the roll in for development. Out of pure paranoia, she said. She didn't even want to look through them, so I went with her to pick them up. Most of the photos were black, some were blurry, but a handful were of her, sleeping. One was taken from the foot of her bed, another from the hallway through a cracked door. The final photo showed her clearly asleep, but what made it worse was the edge of something just barely visible on the right side of the frame. A hand, holding the camera. She told her dad, and they called the police. They said there were no signs of forced entry, but Kayla swore up and down her door had been locked, deadbolt and all. She hasn't used that camera since. We never figured out who or what it was. They never caught anyone. No follow-ups. Nothing. I think whatever we caught on camera in the forest somehow followed us home. But whatever it was, neither of us has experienced anything paranormal since that incident. This happened a couple years ago when I was 17. It was a Friday night in early September and I was home alone for the weekend. My parents had gone to visit my aunt a few hours away, and I didn't feel like going. I had some school stuff to do, and honestly, I just wanted the house to myself for a bit. Around 9 p.m., it started pouring, like heavy, cold rain that just wouldn't let up. I was in the living room, half watching some movie with the volume down and scrolling on my phone. The wind outside was loud enough that it kept catching my attention. Our house is near the edge of the neighborhood, so it's mostly quiet with a long driveway and one streetlight near the front door. Sometime after midnight, I heard 3 knocks at the front door, slow and spaced out. I stopped what I was doing. I wasn't expecting anyone, and strangers usually don't come knocking at this hour. I waited for a second, thinking maybe I misheard it. Then it happened again. 3 knocks. I muted the TV and moved toward the door, staying off to the side. I looked through the peephole. The porch light was on. Rain was still coming down hard, but I could see clearly. There was no one there. I stayed there for another few seconds, then backed off and went to sit down again. I tried to brush it off. Maybe the wind knocked something loose or hit the door weird. It's an old house. Stuff creaks. Maybe 15 minutes later there was lightning and I glanced out the living room window. That's when I saw a man standing at the very end of our driveway, just inside the glow of the streetlight, not moving, arms at his sides, facing the house. I ducked fast. I wanted to stay low. I slowly crawled over to a different window where he couldn't see me and peeked out again. He was still there. Same exact spot, not moving at all. I grabbed my phone and called our neighbor, Mr. Halverson, 2 houses down. He's retired, older guy, real chill. It took a few rings, but he picked up. "Sorry it's late," I whispered. "There's a guy at the end of our driveway, I don't know who it is." "You call the cops?" he asked. "Not yet. I didn't know if I was overreacting." He said he'd look outside. There was a pause. Then he said, "I don't see anyone." I said, "He's under the streetlight. Right at the end of the driveway, you don't see him?" "Nope, it's empty." I slowly peeked again. He was gone. I hung up and called the non-emergency police line, told them what happened. They said they'd send someone to drive by. About 15 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up and I ran outside to meet the officer. He was nice. We walked around the property, checked the woods, side yard, everything. No one around. No footprints in the mud or grass. Nothing. "Could have been someone just passing through," he said. "Still weird though, especially in weather like this." He told me to lock the doors and call again if anything else happened. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept the lights on, sat in the living room watching the windows. Around 4 a.m., the rain finally stopped. In the morning, I went outside to check one more time. I walked down the driveway to where I'd seen him standing. There were footprints, barefoot, clear impressions like someone had just been standing there in the wet. No shoes, no socks, just bare feet. leading down the driveway and out toward the road, but they weren't there yesterday when the cop was here and I hadn't seen anyone all night. I didn't tell my parents everything when they got back, just said someone might have been snooping around. But I keep thinking about it. Whoever that was, they stood out there in the cold, pouring rain. Never moved, and then they just disappeared. I don't know what they wanted from me. Maybe they were looking for an easy target. Maybe if I hadn't called the cops but opened the door instead, I wouldn't be here to tell this story. It still scares me to think about.